அனைவருக்கும் வணக்கம். ஒரு சின்ன தொழில்நுட்ப கோளாறால் ஒரு 10 நிமிடங்களை நாம் இழந்துவிட்டோம். அதை பின்னால் சரி செய்து கொள்ளலாம். இந்த இந்திய குடிமைப்பணி தேர்வு பயிற்சிக்கான வகுப்புகளை நாம் ஒழுங்குபடுத்துகிற போது ஒரு 4 வகைகளில் இங்கே சொற்பொழிவாளர்களை அழைப்பது, வகுப்பெடுப்பவர்களை அழைப்பது என்று முடிவு செய்திருந்தோம். ஒன்று, ஒரு 20-30 வருடங்களாக இந்திய குடிமைப்பணி முதன்மை தேர்வுக்கு பயிற்சி அளித்து கொண்டிருக்கக்கூடிய ஓய்வு பெற்ற பேராசிரியர்கள், அவர்கள் நமக்கு ஒரு படை இருக்கிறார்கள், அவர்களை அழைத்திருக்கிறோம். பிறகு ஐஏஎஸ் என்று சொல்லப்படுகிற இந்த இந்திய ஆட்சிப்பணி சார்ந்த முதன்மையான பொறுப்புகளில் இந்தியாவெங்கும் பணியாற்றி கொண்டிருக்கக்கூடிய சிறப்பான ஐஏஎஸ் ஆஃபீஸர்கள், அவர்கள் இங்கே வகுப்பெடுக்கிறார்கள். மூன்றாவதாக, இந்திய கல்வி நிலையங்களில் பணியாற்றி கொண்டிருக்கக்கூடிய பேராசிரியர் பெருமக்கள், கல்வித்துறையோடு தொடர்புடையவர்கள், அகடமிஷியன்ஸ், அவர்கள் வகுப்பெடுக்கிறார்கள். நான்காவதாக, பல்வேறு துறைகளிலும் சிறந்து விளங்கக்கூடிய பிரபலங்கள், அவர்கள் ஓய்வு பெற்ற நீதிபதிகளாக இருக்கலாம், பெரிய தனியார் நிறுவனங்களிலிருந்து முக்கியமான பொறுப்புகளிலிருந்து ஓய்வு பெற்றவர்களாக இருக்கலாம், தொடர்ந்து பல்வேறு இடங்களில் இது மாதிரி வகுப்புகளை எடுத்துக்கொண்டிருக்கிறவர்களாக இருக்கலாம். அவர்கள் பேராசிரியர்களாக பணியாற்ற மாட்டார்கள், ஆனால் பல்வேறு நிறுவனங்களில் அவர்கள் தொடர்ந்து கல்வி வகுப்புகளை எடுத்துக்கொண்டிருப்பவர்களாக இருப்பார்கள். அவர்களை அழைத்திருக்கிறோம். ஐந்தாவதாக ஒரு புதிய வகை, அந்த வகையில்தான் இன்றைய பேச்சாளர் வருகிறார். அதாவது நேரடியாக நாம் இப்போது சயின்ஸ் அண்ட் டெக்னாலஜி என்கிற ஒரு பேப்பர் நமக்கு இருக்கிறது. இதிலே அதை ஒரு ஏட்டு படிப்பாக படிப்பது, புத்தகங்களிலே இருப்பதை சொல்லிக் கொடுப்பது என்பது ஒரு வகை. அதிலே சொல்லப்படுகிற புதிய டெக்னாலஜியை பரிசோதித்து பார்த்து கொண்டிருக்கக்கூடிய ஒருவர், அந்த துறையிலே தொடர்ந்து இயங்குகிற முனைப்புடன், இன்னும் 20-30 வருடங்கள் அதிலே நான் இயங்குவேன், புதிய சாதனைகளை உலகத்திற்கு கொண்டு வருவேன் என்கிற அர்ப்பணிப்புடன் செயல்படுகிற ஒருவர், அவர்தான் இன்றைக்கு வர இருக்கிறார். நீங்கள் 1990களில் குளோபலைசேஷன், லிபரலைசேஷன் என்பது இந்தியாவில் அறிமுகப்படுத்தப்பட்ட பிறகு இந்த கல்வி என்பது பரவலாகிற ஒரு வேலை அங்கே நடந்தது. அது மட்டுமில்லை, அப்படி நடந்த அந்த வேலையின் மூலமாக இந்திய இளைஞர்கள், தமிழ்நாட்டு இளைஞர்கள், பல்வேறு கிராம பகுதிகளைச் சேர்ந்தவர்கள் பொறியியல் படிப்பை படித்து ஐரோப்பிய நாடுகள் பலவற்றில் உயர் பதவிகளுக்கு செல்லுகிற ஒரு புதிய வாய்ப்பையும் அவர்கள் பெற்றார்கள். கடந்த 10-20 வருடங்களில் இந்த மாற்றம் நடந்திருக்கிறது. இன்றைக்கு உலகப்பந்தெங்கும் தமிழர்கள் பல முக்கியமான பொறுப்புகளில் இருக்கிறார்கள். அதனுடைய ஒரு உச்சமாகத்தான் நாம் இப்போது இந்திய வம்சாவளியைச் சேர்ந்த ஒரு பெண் துணை அதிபரை அமெரிக்காவுக்கே கொடுத்திருக்கிறோம். அத்தகைய ஒரு சூழலில் நேரடியாக இயங்குகிறவர்கள், வெறும் ஏட்டுப்படிப்போடு நின்று விடாதவர்கள், அவர்களையும் இந்த வகுப்புகளில் பங்கேற்ப வைப்பதன் மூலமாக நம்முடைய தேர்வர்களுக்கு இன்னும் சில புதிய ஜன்னல்களை திறந்துவிட முடியும் என்கிற அடிப்படையிலே தான் இந்த வகுப்பு இங்கே ஒழுங்கு செய்யப்பட்டிருக்கிறது. இன்றைக்கு நம்மிடத்திலே பேச வந்திருக்கிறவர் டாக்டர் பாலச்சந்திரன் ஜி ராதாகிருஷ்ணன். அவர் டெக்னாலஜிக்கல் அட்வான்சஸ் இன் எனர்ஜி ஜெனரேஷன் அண்ட் கன்சம்ஷன் என்கிற தலைப்பிலே இங்கே பேச இருக்கிறார். அவர் இந்த தலைப்பிலே என்ன பேச இருக்கிறார் என்று பார்த்தால், டெக்னாலஜிக்கல் சேஞ்சஸ் இன் த எனர்ஜி லேண்ட்ஸ்கேப் from industrial revolution era to the current, with a focus on rapid advancements made in the last few decades and its impact on other technologies என்கிற அந்த ஒரு பரந்துபட்ட பொருளிலே டெக்னாலஜிக்கல் அட்வான்சஸ் இன் எனர்ஜி ஜெனரேஷன் அண்ட் கன்சம்ஷன் என்று அவர் பேச இருக்கிறார். அவரை பற்றி சொல்வதாக இருந்தால், டாக்டர் பாலச்சந்திரன் இஸ் a material researcher currently working on battery materials development in the automobile industry. He is a native of Chennai. He finished his BE in mechanical engineering at a private engineering college in Chennai. He did his MTech in applied mechanics at IIT Madras. After a brief stint in GE in Bengaluru as a computational mechanical engineer, he decided to pursue his doctoral studies in the US. He specialized in atomistic modeling at the University of Michigan for his PhD. After his PhD, he did a postdoctoral study at the University of California, where he studied advanced batteries using atomistic modeling and high throughput computing. Based on his experience in battery, he obtained a position as a contracted materials research scientist at NASA Center in California. Here at NASA, he did computational investigation of batteries that could potentially lead to an electric aircraft. He also studied fire-safe all-solid state batteries that could make batteries safer and more powerful. After his 3+ years at NASA, he moved on recently to the automobile industry to further pursue safe and powerful rechargeable batteries. He also volunteers at the non-profit organization. இதுதான் நமக்கு ரொம்பவும் முக்கியமானது. சமூக அளவிலும் அவர் எத்தகைய பங்களிப்பை செய்து கொண்டிருக்கிறார் என்பதற்கான ஒரு சான்று இது. He also volunteers at the non-profit organization Association for India's Development, AID, which identifies grassroots partners and works with them on critical issues faced by the underprivileged sections of the society. என்கிற ஒரு அறிமுகத்துடன் இப்போது இந்த வகுப்பை டாக்டர் பாலச்சந்திரன் ஜி ராதாகிருஷ்ணன் அவர்களிடம் ஒப்படைக்கிறோம். நன்றி சார். மிஸ்டர் பாலா, யூ கேன் ஸ்பீக் நவ்.
தேங்க்யூ சார். அறிமுகத்துக்கு மிக்க நன்றி. நான் இந்த டாக் பெரும்பாலும் இங்கிலீஷில் தான் கொடுக்க போகிறேன். ஆனால் நீங்கள் எந்த கேள்வி வேணால் கேளுங்க, நான் முடிஞ்ச வரைக்கும் நான் பதில் சொல்கிறேன். Let me just share my screen where I have prepared a few slides. So, I want to talk a lot about batteries. I'm going to give a historical perspective of how technological advances have been made in energy generation and energy consumption. We'll go back to the industrial revolution era, and then we'll come to the present day scenario where how we consume energy and what are all its impacts on other technologies and also climate change. So in today's world, energy is almost a fundamental right. I know that it's not enshrined in any constitution, but it forms a very strong basis of how we live our life, the quality of our life. For instance, if we take our home, the lighting in our home, hopefully electrified. Cooking and food preparation depends upon either LPG gas or in some places electric stoves. TV. The same goes for work. How we commute back and forth from work, whether we take a bus or drive our own vehicle. Sometimes people commute long distances over train or take a flight for their work. All this depends upon some sort of energy storage. And more importantly, today's world is powered by internet. Using different machines. Some we are very conscious of the amount of energy that we use, power that we consume. In other cases, it's almost a daily part of life that we don't consider it as a major factor. And outside of work and home, all entertainment and leisure activities almost always involve some type of energy source, unless of course we decide to go on hard. But how did we get here? The way we consume energy, and how is this energy produced? So how did we get to
பாலா சார், இது கொஞ்சம் கட்டாயி வருது உங்க நெட்வொர்க்கு.
ஓகே.
படமெல்லாம் நல்லா தெரியுது, பேச்சு மட்டும் லேசா இதாகுது.
ஓகே.
இப்போ ஓகே.
Okay, maybe I'll talk loud so that it will be more audible. Okay, நான் கொஞ்சம் கத்தி பேசுறேன். Sorry. இப்போ சரியா கேக்குதுங்களா?
இப்போ கேக்குது, சரியா கேக்குது.
Okay. Okay, we'll try to keep this up. Okay, so if we broadly look at the energy sources and how we are able to consume this energy, uh, what we have on the left is what are all the sources of energy that we have today. We have coal, atomic energy, or oil or petrol based energies. And we also have certain renewable forms of energies, like in the form of hydroelectric power or solar power plants, wind energy, or geothermal energy. Uh, these are all sources of energy, but for this to become consumable or usable, we use one of these three broad classifications on the right. In older times, maybe a couple of centuries ago, or no, even early 1900s, we were still using steam engines. Later on, we moved to internal combustion based engines. And also now we have electrically powered engines. So the way we consume is given on the right side. Now, what powers them, the sources of power is what you have on the left side. Coal, when it was initially looked upon, taken up as a huge source of energy, it was primarily used in steam engine. But once steam engines were found to be less efficient than the internal combustion engines and electric power eventually, coal was diverted to generate electric power. Now, oil and petroleum can still be directly used as a source of energy in the form of internal combustion engine, but they can also be used for generating electric power. All the other renewable energy sources that we have, we figure out a way to convert it into electric power, and then we use that electric power for our daily consumption. So, to give a historical perspective of how this all started, let's go back to Industrial Revolution. So, before Industrial Revolution, it was always human capital that decided how much work or how much you produce. The more number of workers, skilled workers you have, the more you can produce. Of course, you need raw materials and other resources to go with it, but it's the human capital, the amount of human labor that you have that determine how much you produce. But with the invention of steam engine, we were able to use coal as a fuel to generate automatic power. So once you have a steam engine providing power, you are able to automate a lot of processes. So this led to the start of Industrial Revolution. This started in late 1760s or 1780s, and it went on. And it was primarily powered by being able to generate highly compressed hot steam using coal as a fuel. So to give an example of what are all the things that changed because of this Industrial Revolution. So initially you had machines that were powered by steam that scaled up production. So now a single worker with the machine can actually produce a lot more than 100 people employed in the same thing. Power looms replaced hand looms in textile production. This led to a big explosion in textile production. The same goes for iron production. Iron production previously, for you to melt the iron ore, people used wood as a fuel to melt the iron ore and then extract iron. Now, instead of that, they started using coal. So coal became the fuel for in iron production, and this accelerated iron production by leaps and bounds. And using steam engine, people were able to actually transport better, whether it's people or goods that they wanted to take from place one to place two. They were able to use steam power transport. The classic example is trains, ships, and with the automation of all these processes, the industrial processes also started becoming more and more efficient. There were a lot of advances that were made in chemical engineering that basically happened during the Industrial Revolution that was powered by coal and steam engines. So we have this coal that we knew for a long, long time, but it's the ability to use coal in a steam engine that actually revolutionized the whole industry. So this is the dawn of Industrial Revolution to start with. Right? Right around the time the steam engine was being put to use, there was also a lot of research work that was done on using oil as a source of energy. So people have used oil in different forms all over the ages. For example, whale oil was used to light lamps. Right? So a bit of technological advances led to the invention of the internal combustion engine. So you basically burn gasified petrol in a small combustion chamber and use that explosive energy to actually create motion. So you are able to convert the energy that is stored inside petrol into mechanical motion. So this is the whole principle behind internal combustion engine. Once they realize that the internal combustion engine and oil is far more efficient than a coal-powered steam engine, they replaced all steam engines with internal combustion engines. So all these steam-powered boats and ships immediately jumped onto oil-powered ships. So transportation was one area where it heavily changed the landscape. Starting from 1900s, everything in transportation shifted from a steam engine to a internal combustion engine. It replaced coal-powered steam power completely. Right? Now, it advanced to such an extent that oil resources determine what a nation can or cannot do. And given that this was still colonial times, a lot of Western powers tried to figure out which colonies of theirs actually had oil and used it to make advances in their country. So the oil resources determine how wealthy or not a nation is. Right? And it's not just petrol that is actually a major thing out of that you get out of a crude oil or the petroleum. There are a lot of different products that came as a byproduct from once you extracted gasoline or petrol out of the petroleum or crude oil. So to give you how prevalent these byproducts are, the crayons that kids use for shading or coloring their notebooks, it's from a dyed wax, which is a byproduct of petroleum. A lot of industrial processes actually use these types of byproducts. Right? So once they started understanding petroleum better and refining it, and they were able to extract other byproducts as well as petroleum, petrol itself, it became an omnipresent thing, right? To start with, automobile industry started developing in the 1900s as a commercial. Ford was a major player in the early 1920s, and Ford brought about development of the whole middle class in US. So he was able to standardize a salary that was never seen before for. If you want to run these automobiles, you need to have paved roads. So roads became a necessity. So if there is some settlement somewhere, then you have to have it connected by roads for you to be able to, transport goods, material, and humans back and forth from those places. So automobile industry ended up driving development of roads, and once there are a lot of side products that are associated with the development of automobile industry, to the extent that wars were started being fought over oil. So we know a recent one that happened in the early 2000s, but this is not a new phenomenon. So going back to 1950s, Iran, there was a huge fight that came about because of control of oil. So this eventually led to a lot of other events. One thing that we have so far not discussed is what is the impact on climate change. So climate change is now a major issue in all parts of the world. So with the dawn of the industrial revolution, coal was heavily used, and usage of coal is a very inefficient process. Anytime you burn coal, you're going to release a lot of carbon dioxide along with other sulfur and nitrous gases. The same is true for petroleum. Even though petroleum actually burns much more cleaner than coal, it still releases a lot of carbon dioxide and nitrous oxides. There's a lot of effort that is going on into reducing these exhaust gases, but still, whatever you do, as long as you burn a fossil fuel, you are going to release carbon dioxide. There is no changing that part. And it has led to catastrophic events that to this day we are actually seeing, and we will see more and more of its impact in the next coming century. One of the major changes in the way we consume energy came about because of electrification. So the electric power generation and understanding what electricity is, how do you produce energy, how do you store energy, how it can be transported from point A to point B. So a lot of research went into early 1700s and 1800s. But initially it was just used to light lamps. Eventually we started understanding how electric power can be used to run an electric motor and so on and so forth. So at one point, we wanted to replace all the internal combustion engines with electric motors. This is easy as long as the application is stationary. If it is at a single place where you have to deliver electricity, you can use electric grid that connects you to an electric power source. You get the electric energy and you can run it. But once it's a mobile need, the internal combustion engines still dominate that particular field. So a lot of effort was put into figuring out a way to transfer the electric power that you generate at a place to the place of consumption. So this is where batteries, capacitors came into picture, but it still could not compete with the power that you get out of an internal combustion engine. So in any source of power, one thing that you concern is how much energy that you can generate out of that particular source of power, whether it's coal, petroleum, or any other electric source of energy. The first question is how much energy can you generate from that source? The second question is how easy is it for you to transport it from where you find this source to where you want to use it. The ease of transferring that energy from the source to its point of consumption, that's what determines whether that energy source or the form of energy becomes very prevalent in use. Stationary applications, electric energy is one of the best ways of using energy. But once it becomes mobile, like a car or an aircraft, it's still petroleum that dominates because of the ease with which you can actually transfer petrol from one point to another point. You can just fill your tank with gas and then start driving. So a lot of effort went into figuring out how we can make or address this particular issue. But one thing that we can all agree is that one of the cleanest way of consuming energy, and I'm saying when I'm specifically saying consuming energy, not the whole energy source itself, but one way of consuming energy, the cleanest way is actually an electric energy. Any other source of energy, be it coal or oil, you're always going to release a lot of greenhouse or toxic gases when you consume it. Electric energy is one of the most efficient. There is no exhaust, there is no toxic things that are going to come. All the pollution happens at the point of generation. Remember when I said coal became found lesser use after oil became a major source of energy? Well, we still had a lot of coal in the world. So all the coal was used in thermal power plants to generate electric energy. And through grids, this electric energy fed everyone. So you still are burning coal to generate this electric energy. It's basically transferring energy from one form to another form. So this is something that needs to be addressed when we are trying to address climate change impacts from the way we generate energy and consume energy. Right? So now a lot of effort went into electric power generation because other than transport, most of the other applications are stationary. Right? So if I want to machine shop, I can use electric energy instead of running an internal combustion engine, which is Jesus oil, right? So a lot of effort is put into electric power generation. So our government also actually does a lot of power generation, right? For example, the Navy Lignite Corporation produces energy by burning coal. We also have atomic power plants. I'm not going to discuss a lot on atomic power plants, while it is considered a very clean way of generating energy. Atomic energy by itself is a bit tricky to handle. So how you handle the nuclear fuel rods, how you store the nuclear waste after the generation is done is still an unresolved issue. So still, I will not still consider it as a non-toxic energy generation method. It's a bit tricky, very risky. In the event of catastrophic fallout, it's very hard to control what happens at an atomic power plant. So I'll leave it at that. I can answer questions, but I'll leave the atomic power plant topic at that. The other forms of energy generation are on the renewable side of things. So you have solar power plants that are being set up there. You have acres of land that is covered with solar cells. They are all actually becoming a very viable source of energy generation. We'll come to that at a later point. Hydel power plants have been implemented in large scales in India. There are environmental impacts that we did not really understand when the initial hydroelectric power plants were set up. But nevertheless, it represents one of the greenest ways of generating energy. It has its own environmental impacts if you stop water flowing its natural course. Other than that, we do not generate any other toxic waste when you use hydel power plants. Wind power plants represent another very, very green way of generating electric power. One complaint that people have about all the renewable sources of energies is that it's very intermittent. But we will discuss this point at in later part of the talk, where the whole grid integration comes into picture. So the point that I want to tell is a lot of effort is put into generating electric energy, right? Now the question is, can we completely replace internal combustion engines? So this is where the whole field of battery comes into picture, right? And this is something that I can actually discuss a lot more in detail. So any device that stores electric energy for it to be released as and when we want can be considered a battery. Um, Broadly, we can classify batteries into two forms. One is a primary battery, and the other is a rechargeable battery. So primary batteries are use and throw batteries. So this is something that we used to do long time back. You have all these alkaline batteries, AA, AAA batteries that you use it for once and then throw it out. Um, if you remember, maybe early 90s or even before that, um, all the tatas and parties will always have one torch light that they will always make sure that the battery is working really well, and they'll keep replacing the battery. So those are use and throw batteries. Later on, with advances, we had rechargeable batteries come in. Now, even before the current day rechargeable batteries came, we had this lead acid battery that was used in automobiles. So that's a rechargeable battery, except that it's very bulky, very heavy, and it doesn't store as much amount of energy as that we would want. But for automobile applications where you want to start the car, it does a pretty good job. You, you can you can have the starter motor powered by a lead acid battery. The headlights will be powered by a lead acid battery. So those are all very very small applications for which the lead acid battery in an automobile will do the trick. Later on, we had this nickel cadmium batteries, rechargeable AA, AAA batteries that in early 90s, a lot of people were using it in Walkmans. Sony Walkmans actually is one of the first uh, widespread use of small rechargeable battery. So you were able to store enough charge for it to power a radio or MP3 station, right? So further, after along these timelines, we started developing lithium-ion batteries. Initially proposed as a concept in 1970s, the work was so path-breaking that they gave the three researchers that are mentioned here, John Goodenough, Stanley Whittingham, and Akira Yoshino, the Nobel Prize for the work that they did that led to a realization of a rechargeable lithium-ion battery. Um, One of the major issues that they address is that the lithium metal itself is very reactive, but it is one of the lightest metals that we know. And using a light metal means that you can store a lot more energy than in the case of a nickel cadmium battery. So these three people's work changed the direction of lithium ion batteries to a large extent. So one thing that you will hear a lot more in all future advances is how much energy can a battery store in a given weight of a battery. So if let's say that I have my battery weighs 1 kilogram, how much energy can it store? As of now, the lithium ion batteries actually have one of the highest energy, specific energy. The amount of energy that you store in a unit weight is called specific energy. And lithium ion batteries are the commercially some of the highest specific energy batteries that you have in the rechargeable batteries. So why is this important? Why do I need to store a lot of energy in a small battery? So if I can reduce my battery size, then where I put my battery will actually change a lot. If you remember early cell phones, they look like a size of a brick or a single size on the cell phone because the battery was a very heavy one. With advances in batteries, they were able to reduce the size of the battery. Now, if you reduce the size of the battery and still store a lot of energy, then the things that you can do with that battery will also increase. Now, Initially, people were able to just make a phone call on a cell phone. Now, then they advanced towards doing sending messages, SMS. Now, today you can actually download and watch a whole movie in a cell phone battery, purely because you can store a lot of energy in a cell phone battery. So this is one application. The other application is, let's say that you want to do a surgery without actually having to cut open the whole person. So you do laparoscopic surgery. So you just have a small tube that you are going to insert through the arteries, and you will have at the end of it a tool that is going to do the specific cut or whatever medical surgery that needs to be done. And this will be powered by a battery. So you can get as small a battery as possible and then send it in. Another example is pacemaker batteries are very small batteries. So you're able to run a whole heart with a pacemaker battery. Right? So the ability to have small size batteries that store a lot of energy makes a big difference in what you can do with a battery, right? So this is one example of lithium-ion battery advances that have really helped. Now, what is our goal here, right? We want to see if we can completely replace an internal combustion engine with a battery-powered electric engine, right? So we have made quite a few advances in this. So for example, if you fill a tank of a car to the full, depending on the car, let's say that you are able to drive some 500 kilometers in a car. The thing that we expect in an electric battery powered car is that I need to be able to travel the same 500 kilometers, right? So this is one requirement out of a lithium-ion battery. But there is also one more requirement that we want. Let's say that I run out of petrol in my car. The first thing that I do is I go to a petrol bunk and I fill my petrol tank. And that is going to take maximum of 2 to 5 minutes. Can I recharge my battery in 2 to 5 minutes so that I can start driving another 500 kilometers? So that is where a lot of research work is currently being done. So anytime a new electric car comes, so the news that you are going to start hearing more and more is how much time does it take to recharge the battery completely. So people are focusing on the rechargeability of the battery and how quick it can. There are issues in achieving rechargeability. Anytime you try to fast forward a process, it leads to decay in battery capacity. So this is something that you would have seen in your cell phone. The day you bought your cell phone, it will last for 1 day or 2 days, right? And as you keep using and charging and discharging, charging and discharging over a year or two, the battery loses its ability to hold charge. So now your cell phone is not going to last. At which point then you have to either replace the battery or, given the rapid rate at which cell phones come today, you change the phone itself. Now, phone is maybe costs anywhere between 5,000 to 50,000 rupees. You are happy to change it, but cars, on the other hand, are quite expensive. And in particular, the battery component of the car is the most expensive component in an electric car because of the materials that are being used. So you don't want to get to a stage where in 1 year, I want to change the whole battery. So that is where the current research is. There are some superchargers that will achieve 80% of your battery capacity. So it will give you 80% of your range within 30 minutes of charging. So there are techniques of ways of doing this. So you'll start seeing a lot of superchargers in and around India, hopefully soon. But that is where the research on automobile applications currently are. One, I want to be able to drive 500 or even 1000 kilometers without having to recharge. Two, the next time I go to a charging station, I don't want to wait there for 5 hours, 6 hours. I want it done within 5 to 10 minutes. So this is where the current research is. There's enough advancement that you are going to see a lot of electric cars, but it comes at a cost, right? It's still a bit expensive. The other place where people are trying to really get rid of internal combustion engines is trucks and short distance flights. Trucks haul food, raw material from across the countries. Right? So if we are able to replace the engine with an electric engine on trucks, then a lot of burning of fossil fuels will be saved. The other place where we actually pollute the atmosphere is flights. And it could be actually a bit more dangerous because we actually go to a good height, and from that particular height we release the gases from jet engines, right? So the next set of research questions that are trying to be answered is, can we replace the internal combustion engine with a powerful enough battery that it can replace the whole internal combustion engine? So what you see in Teslas and other electric cars, if it uses, let's say, 1 unit of energy, right? Trucks will actually require at least 1.5 units of energy. And short distance flights, you will actually require 2 to 3 times the amount of energy for you to be able to fly those. So people are trying to look at not just lithium-ion batteries. There are new conceptual batteries like lithium sulfur battery and lithium oxygen battery. So both theoretically can actually power a flight for short distances. Say within India, all flights, all mid-sized aircrafts can be theoretically powered by either a lithium sulfur battery or a lithium oxygen battery. The major issue is that the batteries cannot be charged and discharged as many times as you do a lithium ion battery. So there's still a lot of technological work that is being done. But given the advances that we have made in computational research, especially with the new technologies like machine learning, artificial intelligence, it is possible that within next 10 to 15 years, one of these new battery concepts will actually become practical. There are a few small companies that are already trying to do lithium sulfur batteries. And if those lithium sulfur batteries are put in, say, Tesla, which is pretty famous in the electric car field. As of now, a Tesla, let's say that it can go 200 to 250 miles. If you use a lithium sulfur battery, then you will be able to go till 500 miles without, on a single charge, without a need for a recharge. So we have pretty powerful batteries that are currently being studied and have a potential to completely replace internal combustion engines. So one thing that I'll note is that anytime you replace an internal combustion engine with an electric motor and an electric battery, you do reduce the amount of greenhouse gases that you release at the point of consumption, at how we use the energy. Electric energy is use is very non-toxic and it's very, very efficient. Almost 99% energy that you see in an electric battery will be used in the electric motor. But the point that has still not been addressed is the pollution that happens at energy generation and in making these materials. So this is something that is often overlooked. The current lithium-ion batteries use cobalt as a main component, and along with lithium, right? So lithium and cobalt requires a lot of mining, and these mining activities actually happen a lot in South American and African countries where the local population is exploited, and the whole mining process is very inefficient, very polluted. So we still need to make advances in how we mine for these materials or try to use materials that are easily available. For example, in the case of lithium sulfur batteries, you get rid of cobalt or any other heavy metal use completely. We still use lithium, and there are efforts towards replacing lithium with sodium or magnesium. So it's still a long way to go on the material side of things. But on the energy generation side, actually we are on the cusp of completely getting rid of fossil fuels, right? So over the last 50, 60 years, oil was the major, oil and coal. Here it's represented as gas, which is basically natural gas. So natural gas and coal are used heavily in generating this electric power, right? But if you look at the chart that is given here from Business Insider, which is a journal in on the economy side of things, what they show is that it is becoming cheaper and cheaper to produce a unit power of energy, unit of power using solar and wind. So what is missing now is a large scale adoption of these technologies and eventually replace coal powered or gas powered thermal power plants. There are enough advances that have been made in solar cells and the windmills that we can reduce the cost of production of these solar cells or windmills, at the same time generate more power with it. For example, in the case of solar cells, the initial solar cells were made of silicon crystals, which is very hard to maintain. So it's very brittle material and it's prone to damage, right? But recent advances have come up with flexible solar cells. There's a whole array of new solar cells that you are going to see coming upon, which will produce anywhere between 1.5 to 2 times the amount of energy that you produce in a silicon-based solar cell. So the cost of producing energy using renewables is going down, right? And coal and gas resources are becoming more and more harder to find because we have tapped out a lot of these coal and gas plants. We don't know how long or how many more decades the Neyveli Lignite Corporation will last. Right? So now India can either figure out more coal resources outside the country and secure those resources, or it can produce more solar power, more wind-based electric power. India has taken a few right steps in this direction, and hopefully we will see a lot more solar power plants. But this is a critical stage where the government's inputs can actually change the direction in which the way we generate energy, the way we consume energy can completely change. Right? We have enough advances in batteries that can store the generated power. Now the question is, how do we generate this power? India has a lot of solar energy exposure. That's never going to be an issue as far as India goes, right? So any policy changes that we bring about in which these renewables are more encouraged and that particular energy is actually brought into the grid, electric grid, and we disperse this energy in the form of electric energy and promote more green electric cars or electric motorbikes. I think we can bring about a whole change in how we consume, how we generate this energy, and we can be one of the most greenest economies um, that the world has seen, because we hold around 1.4 billion people, and if we take the green route in generating and utilizing energy, then the whole world will see the effect of this. Of course, we need a lot of international cooperation and other sorts of help in achieving this. But this is something that we can really get to it. We have the source of energy, and we also have means of using this energy. At this point, I'll take any questions that you have. நீங்க ஏதாவது கேள்வி கேட்கணும்னா நான் இப்போ பதில் சொல்ல முடியும்.
சார் நன்றி சார். சார் ஒரு அதாவது இந்த பேட்ரி வந்து இந்தியாவிலலாம் எப்போ அதிக பயன்பாட்டுக்கு வரும்னு நீங்கள் நினைக்கிறீங்க சார்? இப்போ மோட்டர் பைக்கில் இந்தியாவில் பண்ணியிருக்காங்க, ஆனால் அது அவ்வளோ சக்ஸஸ்ஃபுல்லாக இல்லைங்கிற மாதிரியும் ஒரு கிரிட்டிசிசம் இருக்குது. அது மேலே ரொம்ப லேட் எடுக்குது, ரொம்ப ரீசார்ஜ் பண்ணுறதும் ரொம்ப டைம் எடுக்குதுங்கிற மாதிரி சொல்கிறாங்க. அது எப்போ நல்ல ஒரு ஒரு ஸ்பீடாக வேகமாக எல்லாரும் பயன்படுத்துகிற மாதிரி இந்த பேட்ரி வந்து இந்தியாவில் எப்போ வரும் சார்?
So that technology is getting implemented. இப்போ நம்ம இப்போ பேசுகிறப்பே வந்து நிறைய சின்ன சின்ன ஸ்டார்ட் அப்ஸ்லாம் வந்து அதை இம்ப்ளிமெண்ட் பண்ண ஆரம்பிச்சிட்டாங்க. ஸோ இதில் வந்து ஒன்று, அந்த பேட்டரியில் வந்து இட் ஷுட் பி ஃபாஸ்ட் ரீசார்ஜபிள், அண்ட் அந்த ரீசார்ஜ் பண்ணுறது வந்து நீங்கள் யூஸ் பண்ணுற ரெகுலர் பவர் அவுட்லெட் மூலமாக ஃபாஸ்ட்டாக ரீசார்ஜ் பண்ண முடியாது. இப்போ எப்படி உங்களுக்கு வந்து எவ்ரி 5 கிலோமீட்டர்ஸ்க்கு வந்து ஒரு பெட்ரோல் பங்க் இருக்கும், அதே மாதிரி எலக்ட்ரிக் வெஹிக்கிள்க்கும் வந்து இந்த சூப்பர் சார்ஜர் அது வந்து அந்த மாதிரி ஒரு நெட்வொர்க் வந்து இன்ஸ்டால் பண்ணும். அது வந்து டிமாண்ட் பொறுத்து அது வந்து வரும். நீங்கள் வந்து என்னை பொறுத்த வரைக்கும் ஒரு 5 to 10 வருஷத்துக்குள்ள வந்து we will start seeing petrol bunk மாதிரி electric recharge stations, at least in the cities it will come out first, முதல்ல வந்துடும். அண்ட் இந்த கார் பேட்டரிஸ் வந்து எனக்கு தெரிஞ்சு ஒரு 1-2 கம்பெனிஸ் வந்து இந்த மாதிரி 80% ஆஃப் கெப்பாசிட்டி அரை மணி நேரத்துலேயே சார்ஜ் பண்ணுற மாதிரி அவங்க வந்து இன்ட்ரடியூஸ் பண்ணிக்கிட்டு இருக்காங்க. நீங்கள் வந்து அடுத்த வருஷம் இல்லை அதுக்கு அடுத்த வருஷத்துக்குள்ளே வந்து இதை பற்றி நியூஸ் வெளில வரும். அந்த கார் பேட்டரிஸ் டெக்னாலஜி வந்து மோட்டர் பைக் வந்து அடாப்ட் பண்ணுறதுங்கிறது மேபி இட் வில் டேக் அ ஃபியூ மோர் இயர்ஸ், பட் வித்தின் 5 to 10 years we will see wholesale changes in um, automobile industry. இங்க இப்போ வந்து கலிஃபோர்னியாவில் வந்து 2030 2035 மேலே வந்து பெட்ரோல் இன்ஜின் இருக்கிற கார் விற்க முடியாது அப்படின்னு வந்து ஒரு ரூல் கொண்டு வந்திருக்காங்க. ஸோ 2035 மேலே வந்து எல்லா காருமே வந்து எலக்ட்ரிக் கார் தான் இங்கே வந்து கலிஃபோர்னியாவில் விற்க முடியும். ஸோ கவர்மெண்ட் வந்து அவங்க பாலிசி மூலமாக புஷ் பண்ணுறாங்க, நீங்கள் வந்து எலக்ட்ரிக் கார் வந்து ப்ரொடியூஸ் பண்ணுங்க and we will make sure that that is the only market. இன்டர்னல் பெட்ரோல் இன்ஜின் இருக்கிற காருக்கு வந்து மார்க்கெட் வந்து அவங்க வந்து கம்மி பண்ணுறதுக்கு ட்ரை பண்ணிக்கிட்டு இருக்காங்க. ஸோ இட்ஸ் அ கவர்மெண்ட் இனிஷியேட்டிவ். ஸோ கம்பெனிஸ் வில் ஃபாலோ. அதே மாதிரி தான் இந்தியாவிலே வந்து ஆஸ் வி மேக் அ ஃபியூ மோர் பாலிசி சேஞ்சஸ் வி வில் சி எல்லாரும் வந்து எலக்ட்ரிக் வெஹிக்கிள் வந்து அடாப்ட் பண்ணுறது ஈஸியாக இருக்கும். ஸோ ஃபார் எக்ஸாம்பிள் இந்த இப்போ வந்து கனடாவில் வந்து ஒரு சி பிளேன் கம்பெனி, அந்த பிளேனில் வந்து ஒரு 10 பேர் உட்காரலாம் ஒரு டைமில். அண்ட் அந்த மொத்த ஃப்ளைட்டு வந்து ஒரு அரை மணி நேரம் தான், ஒரு போர்ட்லேருந்து இன்னொரு போர்ட்டுக்கு வந்து ஃப்ளை பண்ணுவாங்க. ஸோ அந்த ஃப்ளைட்டை வந்து அந்த ஏரோப்ளேனை வந்து தே கம்ப்ளீட்லி கன்வெர்டட் இன்டு ஒன் எலக்ட்ரிக் சார்ஜ் ஏரோப்ளேன். அண்ட் அந்த கம்பெனி என்ன சொல்கிறாங்கன்னா, அவங்களுடைய ஆப்ரேட்டிங் காஸ்ட், அந்த ஃபியூவல் அண்ட் எனர்ஜி எல்லாம் சேர்த்து வந்து பார்த்தீங்கன்னா, கம்பேர் பண்ணிங்கன்னா, இதே ஒரு ஜெட் ஃபியூவல் யூஸ் பண்ணி ஓட்டுறதுக்கும் எலக்ட்ரிக் ஏர்கிராஃப்ட்டுக்கு என்னென்னா வித்தியாசம்னா 10% ஆஃப் தி ஆப்ரேஷன் காஸ்ட் தான் அவங்களுக்கு வந்து யூஸ் ஆகும். இஃப் தே யூஸ் அன் எலக்ட்ரிக் பவர்ட் இன்ஜின், 10% ஆஃப் வாட் இட் டேக்ஸ் ஃபார் அ usual oil or a jet fuel based aircraft. So உங்களுக்கு வந்து it will be very cheap for you to use a electric powered vehicle. So there will be a lot of like consumer கிட்ட இருந்து டிமாண்ட் நிச்சயமாக இருக்குங்க. கன்சியூமர் வந்து ஒரு 10 ரூபாய்க்கு 1 ரூபா செலவு பண்ணுறதுன்னா நிச்சயமாக ஒத்துப்பாங்க. அதுவும் இப்போ இருக்கிற பெட்ரோல் விலைக்கு கன்சியூமர்ஸ் ரியலி வாண்ட் இட். we just need to make sure that அவங்க கேட்குற மாதிரி கொஞ்சம் நீங்கள் சொல்கிற மாதிரி ஃபாஸ்ட்டாக ரீசார்ஜ் பண்ணுற டெக்னாலஜி சீக்கிரமாக கொண்டு வந்தாங்கன்னா இட் வில் ஒர்க் ரியலி ஃபாஸ்ட்.
Good morning, sir. This is Sulochna. We really had a great session and it was too much informative, sir. I had a doubt. Like Elon Musk, Tesla in the car and driverless car, இதெல்லாம் வந்து இப்போ யூஎஸில் நிறைய இன்னோவேஷன் நிறைய பண்ணிட்டு இருக்காங்க. இந்தியாவில் அந்த மாதிரி எப்போ வரும், ப்ராக்டிக்கலி when it is possible? What is the technology behind that and how it is driving us for the future?
So the Tesla battery by itself is not a technologically very advanced one compared to other batteries. அவங்களோட இன்ஜினியரிங் இஸ் a very good engineering team. அவங்க பேட்டரி வந்து முதல்ல பேனாசோனிக் கிட்ட தான் வாங்கி வந்து அசம்பிள் பண்ணாங்க. ஸோ இந்தியன் கார் கம்பெனிஸும் அதை பண்ணலாம். அவங்க வந்து வெள்ளை பேட்ரி வாங்கி பண்ணலாம். ஐ டோன்ட் நோ த பிஸ்னஸ் சைட் ஆஃப் திங்ஸ், ஹவு மச் இட் காஸ்ட். இப்போ வந்து கவர்மெண்ட் கொஞ்சம் சப்சிடைஸ் பண்ணாங்கன்னு வச்சுக்கோங்களேன். ஐ திங்க் கார் கம்பெனிஸ் வில் பி மோர் தேன் இன்ட்ரெஸ்டட் இன் டேக்கிங் அட்வான்டேஜ். லைக் ஐ செட், in another year or two, you will hear about Indian startups in electric cars. அது நான் ரீசெண்டாக கூட ஒரு படித்தேன். நான் பெங்களூர் பேஸ் பண்ணி ஒரு எலக்ட்ரிக் கார் கம்பெனி. தி இனிஷியல் ப்ராப்ளம் இஸ் இட்ஸ் கோயிங் டு பி ஹை அண்ட் கார்ஸ். அதுதான் முதல்ல ரிலீஸ் பண்ணுவாங்க. ஏன்னா வந்து அவங்க வந்து பிஸ்னஸ் காஸ்ட்லாம் ரெக்கவர் பண்ணுறதுக்கு வந்து கொஞ்சம் காஸ்ட்லி கார் வந்து அவங்க இன்ட்ரடியூஸ் பண்ணுவாங்க. அதுக்கப்புறமா தான் வந்து ஜெனரல் பப்ளிக் யூஸ் பண்ணுவாங்க. ஸோ 5 years, hopefully we see more electric cars. That's what I'm hoping for. Yeah, there are enough battery technology out there, and there are enough Indian researchers who actually know how to do this. பிஸ்னஸ் சைடு பற்றி எனக்கு தெரியாதுங்க.
I heard that recently they are tie up with Ashok Leyland for future this thing, sir. But even I'm not sure about that. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your information, sir.
Sure. Thank you.